Iowa Live.
From the Carl Chevrolet Studios in West Des Moines, welcome to Iowa Live for this Wednesday. And of course, we're going to be very busy once again today. And we're going to start things off with Professor Jeff Stein in Waterloo. Right now, it is time for another installment of the Iowa Almanac. Hello, Mr. Stein.
Lou, it is always good to talk to you. How are you, my friend?
Great to talk to you as well. And we were just speaking with some folks over the weekend talking about the Iowa Almanac, and they had a really good question. How long has the Iowa Almanac been around, number one? And number two, what gave you the idea to get it started?
Well, it's now in our 9th year.
Wow.
Amazingly enough. We have done more than 400 different stories, and we actually did look this past weekend at some counties that have been underrepresented. So we're going to try to freshen things up again. And it was a sense, frankly, the idea came about where I thought, you know, we've got a lot to be proud of in this state. We're Iowa nice, we're Iowa humble, and we don't toot our own horn enough. And many of us don't recognize how many things of great importance originated in the state. People, inventions, events. And we thought there's got to be something for every day of the year. And as it turns out, some days are stacked with many more things that are memorable. So that's how we have at least one different story for each day of the year.
What are some of the most talked about episodes that you have done, the ones that people relate to the most?
I tell you, the Eskimo pie one.
Yep.
Because people enjoy learning how that came about, finding out that it came about in Iowa. We also get a lot of response for the one where we find out that John Deere bought a successful tractor company because they didn't know how to make tractors successfully, so they bought a company in Waterloo, and that's how they became a worldwide leader, by being smart enough to stop beating their head against a wall to invent something they just didn't have the grasp on, go buy another company and make it even stronger. Those are the kinds of stories that people tend to enjoy.
Right. Those are all stories that make you put a little smile on your face. But not everything we talk about here is something that we're proud of that has happened in the state of Iowa. But it's something that's very important never to forget. Is that right?
No, absolutely right. And I'm glad you phrased it the way you did, because not every story we tell is a happy one, but it's all important in knowing from whence we came. Let's go back to the winter of 1856 and 1857, pre-Civil War era. Especially harsh in this part of the world. Supplies were hard to come by, and tensions were high between Iowa frontier settlers and some Native Americans in northwest Iowa. Now, the federal government had set up a reservation along the Iowa-Minnesota border. That was part of a treaty, but the promised improvements were not made on time. Supplies were shipped too late to the reservation, and what was shipped, Lou, was really not any good if you expected the people to survive.
And that unfortunately led to some very desperate action.
Absolutely. It was on the morning of March 8th, this date in 1857, that one Native American pushed his way into a cabin occupied by the Roland Gardner family. This was a log structure on the south shore of West Okoboji. He demanded food, which was provided by the family. Then another 14 Sioux, under the leadership of a renegade chief, Ink Paduta, entered the cabin. They all ate, and then they left. But they returned that afternoon, and what became known as the Spirit Lake Massacre began. Between 35 and 40 settlers were killed over a 5-day period. 4 young women were actually taken captive, and one of those 4 was Abby Gardner. She was 13 years of age at the time. Her family was murdered in that cabin after providing food to the intruders. She was ransomed a few months later to a federal agent for this cost: 2 horses, 12 blankets, 20 pounds of tobacco, assorted cloth, calico, and ribbon, and 2 kegs of powder.
Wow, but she survived that whole time. That's an absolutely amazing story. And then she went on to be able to tell her story publicly.
But it did take some time for healing, but some 30 years after the killing, Abby Gardner published a memoir, and it became popular, Lou, because it was one of the last captivity narratives of European Americans being held by Native Americans. Well, in 1891, she took it a step further. She bought the cabin where the events occurred and turned it into a tourist site, and that's where she sold her book and other items for 30 more years. Now, the state of Iowa still maintains the Abby Gardner Shop, her married name Sharp, home site and park. Abby Gardner Sharp, easy for me to say. The chief, by the way, Ink Paduta, was never found, but the killing spree he organized did lead to strained relations for decades, and unfortunately it led to retaliation against innocent individuals. But we note that the last Native American attack on settlers in our state began on this date in 1857.
Wow, so much history here and so many different things. Every day of the year has direct Iowa history attached to it. And if people want to go and check things out, where can they check things out?
Go to iowaalmanac.com, fresh story every weekday, iowaalmanac.com. And if you go there now, you'll also see an events tab. I'm going to be going around the state, Lou, in April, telling these stories in front of audiences in places like Earlham and Indianola, Bondurant, a whole list. iowaalmanac.com. Click on the events tab, all free and open to the public. And I hope to see the folks who are watching Iowa Live in person.
There you go. And you have a chance to get some of your books and things like that, too. So that is really a great idea and some great things to do. And also, if you have an idea for an Iowa Almanac episode, you can jump on iowaalmanac.com and submit ideas there as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. A little email envelope icon at the top of the page. That goes right to my inbox.
All right, Professor Jeff Stein, just so you know, the one that stands out the most to me for the Iowa Almanac, the very first Heisman Trophy winner, what was become the Heisman Trophy, was won by an Iowan. How about that? That is really cool. We'll talk about that in the future. Sounds great. Thank you, Professor Stein. We appreciate it.
Lou, always good to talk to you. Have a great day.
You too.